the greatest reason all the strategies are actually killing your ultimate success. So we're going to move into this one thing.
And we're here to talk about the one thing that will guarantee your success as a musician or artist.
Hey, what up, everyone? Peace and love. JJ Raschel here. I got Sho Ishikura and Liam Quirk here that we're having a conversation around some really, really important topics regarding creative entrepreneurs, professionals, creative artists, musicians. We want to speak to something very specific today that is what we've all seen very prevalent in everyone we've worked with and in the industries as well. So many different potential strategies, right? And how, yes, these strategies are absolutely beneficial to, doesn't matter who's using it and what strategy it is, like it will be beneficial to you. But there's one caveat to this that almost no one is talking about, what we feel is lacking in these industries. And that's ultimately like mental, emotional health and maintaining and sustaining, an empowered vision and not burning out, not sacrificing family, not sacrificing all of these things that are part of being a whole happy human being. So I want to pass that over to Sho first, who's going to really kick us off and has tons of experience working with a lot of artists. He's also a therapist and has had a lot of experience, diving deep into the psychology of all of this as well. So Sho, kick us off, my brother.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, man. You kind of mentioned mental and emotional health, and that's really important. And I think that's something that's talked about a fair bit in these industries. But there's a distinction to make, I think, which is that you can have good mental and emotional health and be obsessed with and honed in on strategies more than you are maintaining an empowered vision. And those are two different things. And we're going to kind of, I think, as we're talking, get into that distinction a little bit more. What I want to kind of just talk about from my experience too, working with artists, is that I started noticing some things, some patterns when I would meet with one artist after another. And I started kind of putting together this pattern over my life as well, which is that there is a certain way of thinking that is the common denominator between every artist that is feeling stuck. And we can call that disempowered way of thinking. We can call it a state of being. But I think what it really boils down to is this sense of, at the core kind of primal level, you're entering this psychological state of self-protection and preservation. So as opposed to being in a state of mind where you're looking at possibility, where you're feeling curious and you're feeling open about things. And this kind of goes back to, really fundamental studies on the human psyche that they've done with babies, where they present them with a toy and, when they enter, if they've just had a harrowing, difficult experience, they're going to react to that thing in a defensive way. Heart rate elevates, there's certain physiological signals, pupils contract, right? Whereas if they've just been having a good experience, it's like they approach it, their nervous system is calm, the pupils dilate, they're kind of ready to take that in. And there's these two very different states of being that greatly determine how we're approaching whatever it is that we're doing. They determine how we're approaching our career, and they can determine the hopefulness and the way that we feel about whatever it is that we're interacting with. Now, the reason that we're talking about all this stuff is because what we see, what I've been seeing with every person that I've been working with, is there's this sense that I'm not doing enough. I don't have what I need. I don't have the resources I need, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what do people do when they feel like that? They go and they start looking for the strategy that's going to unlock them and unstuck them from the place that they're in. And the whole thing that we're talking about today is how you actually, if you're in that place, do not think about the strategy first. Just forget about the strategy, because from that state of being, whatever strategy you're going to choose is not going to help you. And you're probably going to end up feeling more disempowered when you're not able to follow through on that strategy, So I've seen that time and time again in my own life, something I wish I figured out way earlier. But a state of being from an empowered state of being, empowering, fun strategy that you're excited about will naturally emerge. you will find and perceive the opportunity ahead of you that's right for you. And so that's what we're all here to help people do. So
Wow.
that's my 2 cents on it.
Wow. Amazing. Liam.
Cool. Yeah, I want to pick up on something that Sho was just saying. I thought everything he said was brilliant, but this one piece is like so pertinent, and that is that when we're in a place where feeling disempowered, or anxious, depressed, we're just not feeling it or whatever. Well, what I'm hearing Sho say, and it certainly matches my experience, is that stop thinking, stop thinking, because your thoughts are simply going to be a product of that feeling state. And so whatever it is, you're going to rationalize. You're going to rationalize feeling bad. You're going to rationalize feeling anxious, all of these things. And now you're definitely circling the drain. And that's not where we want to be, right? So the key distinction, the key understanding here in terms of how the human being operates is to understand that we are not thinking beings who feel, we are feeling beings who think. So we need to come back to the feeling and to the empowered feeling. And it's so amazing. We're not saying like don't think at all, but just think very simply. And in fact, something that we could say is kind of like a universal life jacket here is to choose faith in yourself. I mean, that sounds kind of contradictory in a way. Like, how can you choose faith? Faith is supposed to be this. No. It's actually just putting your attention back. That's the choosing of the faith, putting the attention back on like, well, really, I feel this talent. I feel this capacity to be generous in my art, whatever it is. Even if you're an engineer, that's an art, right? Whatever you feel that, and that's where we want to come from that connection to our talent, to our genius, where we're comparing ourselves with other people doesn't matter because everybody's got this. So we can connect in and feel into like, well, what is our talent? And we can be grateful for it. And we could kind of build that feeling state. And then from there, we're in a grounded place to make better decisions and avoid, what, this shiny object strategy thing is that we think that there's some kind of solution out there, some way of doing things. Stop thinking, reconnect to the value of your art.
Yeah, I'm sure that people watching this are going to have the question, how do I put my faith back in myself? How do I connect with that feeling? So either of you guys have a take on how would you say to go about doing that?
JJ, why don't you roll with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that ties in perfectly to something or a bunch of things that were coming up for me as both of you guys were talking, very related to what Sho was speaking to with, the baby and their reaction to just simply a toy after some experience that they had prior to that, and then when Liam's talking about how, we can choose, right? We can choose belief or faith in ourselves, and if we kind of go back, turn the wheel back and rewind for a minute of like, if it's true, which is, it's trippy, right? Like even as a baby, we started making, what do we call it? Unconscious or subconscious decisions about how to react to things. Like these survival functions are pre-built in our system, that just happen automatically, and so we kind of accidentally build something that is good to protect us from certain things, but also then it becomes like dysfunctional and it's not helping us moving forward. Like we're keeping ourselves from like doing something that might be a little bit scary, but we know it's exactly what we should do for not just the betterment of our craft, but as a human being, like us as a human being, and one of the most powerful ways I would say to maybe confront is not the best word, but to confront our fears or face our fears or move through those kind of scary or dysfunctional or anxious or sad or depressed emotions and those feelings that we, maybe we're losing sight of this dream that we've had, is that if we really start to, again, it is a choice. It is a choice. So number one is like we we have to start to know that we can actually decide, that we can actually choose, that we're worthy to have this dream that we could argue was like literally planted inside of us before we were born. You know, what is the strange unfolding that happened that allowed me to have, you know, my story? Both my parents were musicians. They struggled with addiction and all kinds of different, you know, things throughout my whole life, even to this day, you know, and growing up in the bar, listening to their band play on stage, and like playing on stage when as a little kid, sitting on the amp in the back, just kind of plucking around. My dad's got me turned down real low, so you know I'm not mucking things up, so to speak, you know. But and just having all of those experiences that led me to becoming a musician, and having the dream, oh, I see Hendrix. Every time I think about being a kid and music, I always see Hendrix on the front of that album cover, you know, just like, oh, that's who I want to be like, you know, playing that guitar on stage and tearing it up, and like all the purple colors and psychedelic colors coming out of it, right? Like there's a vision there. There's an image of me expressing some deep aspect of myself. And then what is the weird, strange unfoldment that everything happened the way it did, where I left my parents' home and I went and lived with my grandma because it was a safer space for me and my brother and multiple other foster kids and such. And like I got exposed to all this kind of spiritual, rich knowledge that was in all these books she had and stuff. And like I look back on that and I'm like, okay, everybody has a story of their own, right? Everybody has a story of their own. And when we start to really start validating how things happened for us, rather than validating why all this shit happened to us, right? We start to flip the script a little bit. And it's what Liam said, it's a choice. And with that choice, then we can begin the process of like exactly what Sho was saying. With when we were a baby, we reacted differently, and we started creating automatic responses from that point on as a baby. So it was kind of like not in our choice at that time, depending on what depth of, whether we're going metaphysical or not. Like we could say, yeah, at the higher level, maybe you chose it, but let's be here for a second and say, like, at that level, we didn't have a choice, right? But now we're kind of remembering that we have a choice to decide an empowering story, right? And so, like, if we talk about Tony Robbins, dude, Tony Robbins, his whole fundamental foundation for everything he does is that you must get into first to an empowered state, then begin telling a more empowered story. And then, as Sho said, the strategy naturally arises, it naturally unfolds from that. So the how is really about beginning to tell a different story. I would say that's like step one, you know, really validating all the reasons why actually everything has been working exactly in your benefit up to this point, and letting go of like, oh, I need to be farther. Oh, I wish I should have done this, wish I should, all this stuff. It does require that faith that Liam's talking about. Trust in the journey, trust that there's some higher being, power, universe, system, you know, that's guiding what you're doing. And that's going to be one of, I would say, probably the first step to like beginning healing this, you know, dysfunction. So I'll pass it to you from there.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I was just talking about this to somebody yesterday, but it's exactly that. When we're in a disempowered place, our mind, especially if we've been in a disempowered place for a while, our mind has been entrained to look at why everything has happened to us to make it so that we will not succeed, right? Like, I'm sure everybody watching this at some point has had an experience of like, man, if this just didn't happen, or if this wasn't like this, or, you know, if my family wasn't this family, or, you know what I mean? And it's like, what does that do for you? You know, because sometimes when I tell people to look at all the reasons that like everything has worked out for them perfectly, you know, they're like, yeah, but there's like all this other stuff. And then I'll say, and what's the utility of that for you, really? You know, because think about it, like what happens when you look back into your past? Look at everything that you're grateful for. Your connection with music, for instance. And JJ, you're talking about your experiences with your family, right? Your parents and who they were and what happened. Now you could easily look back on that same past and say, why did I have two parents that were addicts? You know?
Yeah. I did for so long, right? You know, Yeah.
And that would be so understandable for you to do that, you know? But what did it do for you to
Yeah.
do that? Right. And this is the thing is that as we all know in this room, training yourself to look for all the evidence that everything is working out for you when you're in a disempowered state is a difficult thing to do because it feels unnatural and it feels untrue.
Hmm.
You know, and I always kind of I like this metaphor. I explain this to my clients a lot that like your patterns of thought, you can imagine there's like these pathways of water running through your brain, right? And like a well grooved out pathway, the water just flows through easily. If you've been thinking a lot, and you know, over and over again about why everything has been working against you, it's like, you know, something triggers you, something happens, and it's like the water just goes rushing through because it's well carved out. But what the cool thing is that like we completely have the agency to change that. And every time we're looking for evidence about how everything is working out for us, I kind of liken it to taking a shovel and then just digging into the earth and then just you're carving out a new pathway. And imagine what would happen if every morning you just woke up and looked at all the evidence about how everything is working out for you. For me, to even just be able to sit in my room and record and have an experience where I'm writing and like just enjoying it. Like I've had that experience in my life many times, you know? And like if I think about everything in my life that has had to happen to lead to me having the privilege to be able to have that experience, it's like, you know,
Hmm.
I've been training myself to be empowered and grateful, you know?
Beautiful. Yeah. Can I pick up on something you're saying here too, Show?
Uh-huh.
And that is that this I love the metaphor that you're giving about, digging new pathways for the water to flow, and there's in addition to that, there's this understanding that's helpful, which is that what we're looking for is potential, right? What we're looking for is like what's possible, where can something grow? And when we're looking to the past and like, well, all this stuff has happened to me and it's in the way. Well, there's not much potential there.
Yeah.
Whereas, if we kind of say, wow, look at, all these things that had to happen, like you're saying, in order for this to be possible. Now there's potential there because you see that there's this momentum into greater production, greater sense of empowerment, greater artistry, all of that. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking to kind of keep the wheels rolling on that momentum into greater empowerment. And and sometimes it simply just means realizing when we're tripping, right? When we're off on some negative story and just say, oh, wait a second. That's all. Just stop because the potential is always right here in the moment. And if we're wrapped up in some disempowering story, that means we've said like, "Hey, coach, take me out of the game. I don't want to play anymore."
Well,
Whereas the reality is we want to be in the game and playing. But if all our energy is tied up and now things are going so bad and I'm so anxious or angry or whatever, there's no potential there. And that means there's a 0% for the kind of positive, ongoing development that we need to stay in this empowered state and find some positive flow.
you know, I think now might be a cool time to share some personal stories. I think that would be really valuable for people listening.
Hmm.
Where we found ourselves in that place and how we got out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's perfect too for something that I really wanted to highlight from what both of you were saying as well is really how hard it is in that disempowered state to choose an empowered story about it, an empowered perception and perspective on it. And I guess I'll speak to the intellect, the mind first, to paraphrase Einstein. He said, you can't solve a problem at the same level it was created at, and really this speaks to so deeply to this moment when you are down in the dumps and you're really feeling low and you feel like the deepest anguish sometimes maybe that you've even ever felt, right? There's this study that, artists and creatives and musicians suffer from depression like 3% more than general population, things like that. But like ultimately everybody's going through these things. And this moment when you're so deep down in this dark place, so to speak, it's this feeling of impossibility that you're ever going to get out of it. And something I just want to highlight in that moment, or even in any moment relative to that, is that like for me personally, there was a time, I was really struggling in my family life. I wasn't able to see my kids for like 8 months. My wife was in a different state dealing with health issues. I couldn't pay rent. I was ready to get kicked out of this apartment, couldn't find work for so long, trying to play these shows while running a construction company, while doing all these different things. And I'm like ready to lose it all, basically. And that moment for me, it's like life. And I didn't know this then, but I look back and I realized like life loves you so freaking much that if you don't do it willingly, it's going to force you to have to let go and surrender. And like letting go and surrendering, dude, is like, people say, oh, that's a weak thing to do, or da, 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 but it's actually the most courageous thing that you can do because it requires utter trust without knowing how whatsoever. And in that moment, it allowed me to make decisions that I never would have made, from my normal state of disempowered being, and victimhood and all of that stuff that I was living through. And, from that, I'll make it short, but from there, it's what actually caused me to make the decision to go ask someone I'd done a bunch of construction work for a loan, and to join a program to help me heal from the stuff that I was going through, and like start a business and start my coaching business built around what I didn't know then, but it became what I made to build around helping artists go through the same thing that I was going through, and it ended up being that the guy refused to give me a loan. He just gave me a grant. He gave me the money and said, don't ever pay me back. And I love you, bro. And he gave me an extra $1,000 to pay rent. And like so it was like, ended up being like 9K, if I remember correctly, that he gave me just out of nowhere and just gave it to me as a gift. I never would have made the decision to even fathom asking somebody for help. Life loved me so much. It was going to destroy the little box of limitation I'd created for myself to say, hey, you're going to go fucking ask for help. You're going to surrender,
Dude.
And dude, it's like so freaking powerful, man. You realize the depth of what life is doing for you all the time.
I know.
So,
dude, it's so powerful. It's so good, man.
Totally.
It just highlights this really important piece to all of this, is that when we're going through this stuff, always we're being asked to let go of something or surrender to something every single time without fail, and I just love the way that you phrase it. Life loves you so much that it wants you to learn that,
it's gonna kick your ass. It loves you so much.
But it's like on the other side of that, it's like the most liberating, expansive, possibility-filled feeling that you can have.
Bro, for sure.
All that potential. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking about a time in my life, and I'm sharing this story because it's like every musician I've coached, pretty much they all have this experience of like reaching a point where you don't want to write music, you don't want to work on it, and you don't want to listen to it.
I know that. Yeah.
You don't even like listening to music. You're like, oh my God, like I can't hear music anymore,
Yeah.
And I was in that place, and this is before I was into all this stuff, so I didn't really understand what was happening on an intellectual level. I just knew that like I couldn't listen to music anymore, and that like writing and producing was really difficult to do. And I just kind of stepped away from it largely, like for a little while. And at a certain point, I was like, you know what? Like I had this epiphany where I was like, why did I like doing this in the first place? And what drew me to it was like just being a kid and just being so drawn in and mesmerized by music. It was the listening. And I realized that so much of my energy had been I've been tightly gripping this idea of a successful career and being a successful artist and musician. And it was like, I can't grip onto that indefinitely and also be like in this state of just curiosity and wonder towards this thing that I love, you know? And like looking back, I realized that it's like that's what that painful experience was, of feeling so disconnected from this thing that I love and feeling like I'm never going to have this success because I'm like so disconnected from this thing. You see what I'm saying?
Mm.
Like all I had to do was just let go of it, you know, and just say, you know, so what if I don't do any of these things? It's fine. And what I started doing was just every morning before I started my day and did anything, I would lay on the floor and pick an album and listen to it.
Mm.
Very quickly, my like joy and connection with music came back, and I was like, "Wow, this is wild." You know, this is not to
Yeah.
be successful and to tour and to like be recognized and validated and all that shit had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
It was like as soon as I reconnected with the actual source, it was like, damn, I want to write some shit. Like I'm inspired, you know? But I had to let go of this attachment that I had to success. I had to surrender that, you know?
Wow.
Wow. That's so beautiful, man.
Amazing
And
show.
the
Yeah.
simplicity of just back to the basics, the core of
Mm-hmm.
all of it, you know, it's like
Mm.
amazing.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Well, I got a story for you guys too.
We want to hear it. We want to hear it.
Yeah. Well, it's slightly in a different vein than what you guys are talking about, but it's exactly the same thing in other ways. And that was one day. I don't remember the exact circumstances anymore. It was a while ago, and I just sat down on the couch with my guitar, you know, just noodling around or whatever. And I just I played some chord or whatever, and suddenly this song kind of just like I know you guys have had this experience. This song just was birthed, right? And I had no idea. Like I wasn't trying to write a song or whatever, and it was just happening. And I was like, okay, this was that surrender moment. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just go with this. So I start playing this thing, and then the lyrics start coming, and the lyrics were like, "I am the one, right? I'm the one who told you you have nothing to fear." And I was like, well, who's this? Right. But I just kept going with it, you know, and it was, and I pretty much wrote the whole song, which is called Angel in Your Heart, at one go. And it was like my higher self or whatever talking to me, giving me a talking to. And I was so blown away by that experience. It completely changed my relationship to songwriting, my relationship to music, my relationship to myself and everything, because it was like, wow, it was the kind of real world experience and knowing that there is an aspect of me, a higher self, a divine self, or whatever, who's looking out for me and is trying to help. And so that was huge, has been huge.
That's so cool. I think that's one of the most powerful experiences
Dude.
as a writer is to have that feeling that it's like you're being spoken to from something outside of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and there's this understanding that comes from it, like that, oh, well, who I know myself to be now, that's all cool. I'm down with it. But there's something greater. There's always something greater.
Uh-huh.
And I'll be open to that, or am I just gonna hold on to what I think I know now about myself? Well, as we
Mm.
all know, it's the unknown that brings the new and the expanded self. So that's where that surrender.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Jeez. Jeez Louise. Well, with all of that said, I think there's this one thing that we could plug in here for practical use for people, you know, that, you know, whether you're an artist, a musician, an influencer, an entrepreneur of any kind, whether just everyday person, whatever you do, like ultimately anyone can apply this, and it like this is true for everyone, right? And it's just love how it just ended on this thing that we're really getting to, and this silence that does live inside of us, this presence, this silence, this nothingness, right? That surrender itself is the purpose. That's what surrender's purpose is to get you to let go of everything you think and believe that you know, which equates to like all the past story of everything, which causes the disempowered state, which causes, and this feeling stuck and burnt out, and all the different strategies that you try to achieve, and you're trying to get something from a place of deficit, and you're trying to fill in that void with things that can't fill it in. And like the surrender's opening this space for you to sit down on your couch with your guitar and noodle around and just like be in nothingness, and boom, receive this download that it's always trying to give you. Always. It's not that it just gives it to you sometimes. It's just that we're not always listening,
Absolutely.
It's always there. And it's outside of you and it's inside of you. And it's this presence that whatever you call it, doesn't matter. God, source, universe, energy, life force, it doesn't matter. Like it's this power that just exists. And it's like David Hawkins always, he wrote a book about it. Power versus force. Force is always just kind of like this striving and forcing upon, trying to create it out of, matter on matter and, grind. Or you can kind of surrender to this infinite power that is just always there. It just is. And that can be the reservoir that you draw from, right? And I think what we're all speaking to is like coming back to yourself, dude, like the presence that is you, that you've been distracted from and created a lot of noise around to not be able to hear anymore. Or maybe you hear faint glimpses of it, but like we're here to say, like, let's be in it all the time. Let's be in that flow state all the freaking time if we can. Doesn't matter what we're doing, and like let's draw from there. And we could arguably say, like all of the greatest entrepreneurs in the world, millionaires, billionaires, people who are actually doing really beautiful things, people that all three of us here have learned from, who are like highly successful entrepreneurs, all three of us being in all these programs as well. Anyone who's successful at that level realizes they can't grow any farther or scale or anything like that until they finally overcome those like barriers that self-imposed, that don't have anything to do with the system or strategy. They finally realize it doesn't have anything to do with the strategies. It's about me beginning to have a full out brand new perspective and view on what do I truly want? What am I truly deciding and making decisions from presently from this disempowered state? And what do I have to be grateful for already that can multiply and magnify and amplify when we just focus on it and we start to get into that place, and things that we couldn't see otherwise show up, that are opportunities and possibilities. And so Is there anything else you guys would like to add to this amazing discussion? Because I think we're about 40 minutes in. I'm cool to keep going, but like if there's any other icings we could throw on the cake here, guys.
I got one little piece I'll add, and then Sho, I'm sure you got something to say too. Like I love what you just said, JJ, and the thing I would say is something great is trying to happen all the time. Something great is trying to happen. And when we're in the flow, we know that and we feel that and we move with it. When we're not in the flow, well, guess what? Let go of something. Surrender, because something great is trying to happen.
Yeah. That's really good. I think that I just kind of want to speak to people that are thinking like, well, how do I know what to let go of, and how do I surrender? And, because I have this feeling in my chest that's just working against me so much. Just a few things I think to end on. One is that this is like it's an ongoing practice. This is something I think all three of us are practicing, looking for evidence of that supports empowering beliefs, meditating, things like that. And also investing and also choosing to be in communities where we can kind of assimilate to that mode of thinking through our proximity, right? That's why I like hanging out with you too,
Likewise.
So
same here.
That's kind of my answer to, if anybody's watching, wondering how, I'd encourage you to kind of just reach out, talk to us, get in touch,
Perfect.
because that's what we help people do.
Amazing. Yeah, guys, with that being said, first of all, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the discussion. Super grateful for you guys. And we're going to leave a link down in the comments or in the description for you to, book a call if you so wish and get some more information to have this deep clarity that we can help you really get clear on what is blocking you, what's keeping you held back, what is that resistance, and so that's what we can really help you do in these one-on-ones that we just jump for free. We just jump on, and it's just to serve you. So that's down in the description. And otherwise, we look forward to seeing you on the next one. And we wish you all the best. Lots of love. Peace, my friends.
Yeah,
Peace.
be well.